A little bit about the India-Israel Innovation Initiative. In January this year, on the 20th anniversary of the India-Israeli relations, Observer Research Foundation came up with the ambitious plan of bringing together entrepreneurial India with innovative Israel to create, if I may quote Mr. Kulkarni's words, to create a powerhouse that would make a difference to millions of people. And so was born the India-Israel Innovation Initiative. We have had two illustrious speakers. The initiative was inaugurated by Sri R. Gopalakrishnan, who was chairman of the Tata Innovation Foundation. And we have brought out a booklet on the event. The second talk was by Dr. Ada Yonath, who was a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, who has contributed to the understanding of the structure and function of ribosomes. Dr. Berry is the third speaker, as I've already mentioned, and a little bit about Dr. Berry. He graduated with distinction in medicine from the University of Cambridge. He trained in internal medicine at the Royal Postgraduate Medical School, London. In 1973, he migrated to Israel, and he's currently at the Hadassah Hospital at the Hebrew University. After the army service, he won a Fogarty Research Fellowship at the Rockefeller University, New York, working on fat cell metabolism. His principal research interests are on the biopsychosocial problems of weight regulation, from obesity to anorexia nervosa. He coordinates the multidisciplinary hospital team that treats adult eating disorders. He teaches medicine, nutrition, and public health. Dr. Berry has published over 150 articles and is on the editorial board of 3 journals on clinical nutrition. He's currently an associate professor in both internal medicine and nutrition. He's also the head of the World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Capacity Building in Public Health. And I would request Dr. Berry to share some of the interesting work that he has been doing in this capacity, both in India and in Africa. I just had a brief 20 minutes chat with Dr. Berry. He's an incurable optimist. He prefers to look at the glass half full rather than empty. And he has a sense of humor. And if he could, he would synthesize humor and introduce it in the water supply. So I will not delay the talk anymore. I would request my colleague Shilpa to greet Dr. Berry with a bouquet. Would you like to say a few words? Yeah.
Friends, tomorrow is March 8, International Women's Day, and we won't be seeing many of you tomorrow. And therefore, on behalf of the Observer Research Foundation, I would like to extend very warm greetings to our sisters and all the women members of our families. A very, very happy Women's Day. Thank you.
Mr. Kulkarni and the Observer Research Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this special invitation after such illustrious predecessors. I'm going to bring you back to Earth, actually, to agricultural Earth. And I'm going to talk to you about why food is important And what happens when there's too little or there's too much? It's very difficult to get it right, get it in the middle. The takeaway line for all those who want to have a siesta is this, what I've written on the board. A well-fed nation is a healthy nation, is a productive nation. Now, like most of us are drivers, and I've learned a thing about driving in Mumbai, or at least why I wouldn't drive in Mumbai, is that food is our fuel, is the fuel of the human body. Now, we know that you're going to have regular fuel and you have premium high fuel. Now, it is terribly important that the country, or the people in the country, get the highest possible octane fuel. I wish it could be 98, even 100. Now, a lot of people are surviving on 50 octane fuel. Now, the car will go on 50, but it's not good for the engine. And exactly the same, if food is of the wrong octane, i.e. doesn't have enough micronutrients, doesn't have enough protein, we're in trouble. The body won't function, and more particularly the brain. And because we want to be a productive nation, our brain power, and Indian brain power is very, very strong, has to be best. And that has to start in children. Actually, it has to start, what we learn now, at -9 months. Because we know what a pregnant woman eats during pregnancy will have long-term effects, not only how the kid develops, but on a generation. Will he get diabetes? Will he get heart disease? It's quite amazing what we've learned. So that's the introduction, and now I need to start. We're going to talk a little bit about why food security, which is the other side of the coin of the double burden, obesity on the one hand and undernutrition on the other. I'll talk a bit about malnutrition, and then I'm going to do some original work. When I set this exam question for 20 years, can we define a country by its nutritional status? Is there such a thing as a nutritional index? And one student took it up. He's now in Harvard, and I'm going to show you what a nutrition index takes us in and what we can do about it, and then talk a little bit about practical of how you actually can deal with it. Okay, so the definition, and this is pretty common sense, isn't it? That all people at all times have both physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and healthy food for an active, healthy life, or nutritious food. So basically, what that long sentence says is everybody should have 98 octane fuel. Okay? That's the minimum we can ask. And the thing is, there's enough food in the world for everybody to eat. It's just not equitably distributed, okay? If you have excess, I mean, this is, I feel so strongly about it. If there's excess grain in the United States or elsewhere, or too many tomatoes in England, what do? They don't give it away or pass it on. They destroy it to keep the agricultural prices. And the same in the European Union. So there's great iniquity and great ethical and moral problems about this. Now, if we agree that it's a fundamental, and food is a fundamental human right. Nobody should starve. And so it has to be sustainable. It's no good just handing out food and then going away. That's no good. That's the principle of giving people a fishing rod, but not giving them instead of giving them fish, okay, that they can go and do it themselves. You have to listen to people's social values, and it's very important. There are lots of vegetarians here in India and also in Israel, and that's terribly important. Okay, it should be distributed equitably, culturally acceptable, and so that there should be human dignity. So how do we think about it? So I'm making this very simple and with the Israeli flavor here. Look, there are three things that we have to consider. We have to consider food at the level of society or at the level of the nation. That's the first level, bottom right. We have to think about it at the family level and at the individual level. Does the food get distributed within the family? Do men take the bigger portions? Do women and children get enough? There's quite a lot going on even within the family. And so the other thing is there've got to be 3 A's. The food has to be accessible, it has to be available, and it has to be adequate. So now we're going to put these 3 onto the first 3, and you get a picture looking like that. So what it means is, and you recognize this is the Monk and Dobbin, at the level of the society, it has to be available, i.e. there's agricultural provisions, okay? There's enough production. All food is imported, okay? So it's available at the society level. There's food out there. At the level of the family, it has to be accessible. Is there enough money to buy the food? Are there people who are handicapped who can't get to the food? It's got to be accessible. That's a lot to do with employment and money, the dignity of labor. And at the individual level, it has to be adequate, that the children get enough protein, carbohydrates, minerals. So that's how it is. The food has to be available, accessible, and adequate. Now, who's at risk? So that's all very nice, and that seems to be very... Well, there are a large number of people who don't have food security, who go to bed at night hungry. And unfortunately, this list gets longer. Natural disasters. You had a fire just recently, just outside Mumbai, in one of the districts. Okay, what happened to the people after that? Where do they get their food from, which was already jeopardized? And that goes on in the world. Victims of conflicts. What's going on in Libya at the moment? The mass migration of people. These people are all at risk, obviously. Refugees, internally displaced persons. This is a problem in big countries, Russia, China, India. When people move from one area to another, they're at risk for not having food security. Migrant workers and families, that's fairly obvious. But then there's the marginalized population, street children, the unemployed, the homeless, sorry. So that's a Freudian slip if ever there was. Wasn't it? Homeless or hopeless, yeah, orphans. Social groups, minorities, illiterate, people who can't read or write, low incomes, and then the dependents, the elderly, the handicapped, special needs. Where did I put single mothers? That should be on, definitely. Women and children, but single mothers too, when they have one foundation. So this list, again, is fairly obvious, but we tend not to think about it and except read about little things about it in the paper. Some of the statistics, and I'm particularly interested in children. You know, give me a child till he is 7 and he'll be mine till he goes to heaven. Similarly, with regard to nutrition, if they get you good nutrition up to the age of 7, then you're going to be good foundation for a solid life and cognitive development, which is so important. But you can see lots of children in the millions are under 5 who are acute or chronically underfed, and yet they have this thing of this double burden. This is very strange, which is increasing in Eden. It's the combination of obesity on the one hand and undernutrition in the other. Now, this is a very complicated culturally and socially economic problem. We used to say in developed countries, the developed countries, Europe, America, obesity is a problem of the lower social economic classes. The upper social economic followed the Duchess of Windsor, saying you could never be too thin or too rich. And so it tended to be a lower social economic problem. In Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, or the whole of Africa, obesity is a higher social economic, all right? Because they've got more money and it's all culturally acceptable. If you are thin in Africa, it means at worst you're ill, and at very worst you've got HIV/AIDS, and you're not fertile, and therefore there's a culturally acceptable of being obese, on the one hand. On the other hand, you have all the children with chronic malnutrition, not growing. So this coexists. This is something we call the double burden. I'm going to give you a few more facts. You don't have to remember them. I just want to give you the big three problems of the micronutrients. Okay, these are vitamins and minerals. They don't give you calories, but they're very important for your body to grow. And the big three is iron in the soul, Jean-Paul Sartre. Iron that is important for your hemoglobin, for your blood, the strength of the blood, so you're not anemic, particularly important in women and children. Iron is very important for cognitive function. The second one is iodine on a boil basis, which we can put into salt, which affects the thyroid, okay, your metabolism here, but also through that, how your brain functions. Terribly important. And the third one is vitamin A, which is important for two things. This is all prevalent all over Asia and in Africa, where there isn't food supplementations. And vitamin A is important for seeing, especially at night, but also for the immune system, such that kids get measles who are vitamin A deficient. They do very badly. They die from it. Okay, so it's a dangerous, very dangerous combination. There's also, we need calcium for our brain, for our bones, and for lactating women giving their milk, and also for pregnancy. And vitamin C is terribly important to fruits and vegetables, especially in the deprived and refugee populations where they don't get enough fruits and vegetables and citrus fruits. I was very interested in Elephanta Island, which I visited. There's a beautiful, he's holding, you know, the central triptych, you know, the creator, preserver, and destroyer. In his hand, he's holding a citron, which I noticed. Have a look, have a look. That's a very important source of vitamin C. It's giving us a nutritional message. I wasn't sure how many people recognized it there, but that's it. It's yes, so you'll have a look at that, check if I'm right. This is just to give you roughly pictures from East Africa and South and Central Asia in the yellow of the anemia in pregnant women. I mean, and I hope it's better now, but in South and Central Asia, in the yellow here, it's up to 80%, 75% women are anemic during pregnancy. And that's not good for them or for the baby. And iodine deficiency, it's in Southeast Europe here, it's a different color, but it's still Southeast Asia, over 10%. Right, so a major problem in this area we have is of getting enough iron. Now that's quite interesting because, of course, the iron mostly comes from meat products, and meat products are not so well eaten in this part, not so culturally acceptable. Well, that's very interesting. By the way, just a nutritional aside, even though I think it's much more healthy and spiritual to be a vegetarian, our bodies are designed to have a little bit of meat. It's meat for iron, meat for B12, vitamin B12, and meat for the fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, which you find mainly in fish. So just a little, that's quite interesting, even though it's, I think, preferable, but we won't go into that. Now, why does this happen? There are two views, depending on if you're an economist here or you're a nutritionist. And of course, when you have more than one, they're probably both right a little bit. The economists say, well, it's people, you're not producing enough, there's not enough money to buy food, and there's low income, and that's why there's malnutrition. The nutritionist says, well, actually, it's people don't have enough education, they make the wrong choices. So why should obesity be, for instance, in developed countries in the lower social economic classes, okay? Because the food that they buy with poor education is high energy rich, and therefore they become obese. And there's a relationship between nutrition and the body's resistance to disease. So those are the two. And then you synthesize it, and on this picture, this is a sort of causal diagram where normally they have basic causes, underlying causes, immediate causes, and outcome, okay? And then you get malnutrition. For instance, you obviously need sufficient I mean, for the body to be healthy, you need the food on one hand, but the body has to be healthy and not diseased, so it can absorb and utilize the food. So there's the immediate causes are not enough to eat and you're not well, okay? You have parasite disease, you've got malaria, okay? And then what underlying cause? But from a public health point of view, what's right in the center here is inadequate education. And there's another message I want to give you. If you're going to try to improve a well-fed nation, really, you've got to have education. People have got to know to make the right choices. People have got to know to eat, and to eat with moderation and to eat well. Everything in moderation, including moderation. Here's some of the... You know, what we need to realize is that Gauss, you remember this business that you learn in statistics and you learn maybe in quantum mechanics, I don't know, that everything follows a normal distribution. This is probably the exception, because certainly when we're talking about nutrition and things, it's much more the Pareto distribution, you know, the 20-80, 20% of 80% of the work done by 20% of the people, and within that, look at that. 1%, the income of 1% of the richest in our planet equals 57% of the poorest. Isn't that amazing? That's quite something. 20% live off $1 a day, 40 rupees a day. Okay, 50% earn less than 100 rupees a day. And the Gini index is increasing, as you see, the difference between sub-Saharan Africa and the industrialized nation, how that has gone double, 9 to 18 difference, okay, the per capita income. That gap is widening. However, there has been some progress. The amount of food available has gone up, okay? Food insecure people has gone down, 37% to 7%. But it has been very uneven, and the major problem really is in South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. So there it is, it's uneven. We have to think of Pareto and not Gaussian distributions. And then we have 3 vicious cycles, which I'm going to show you now, which really complicate things. The first one is the malnutrition infection cycle, what I said. If somebody is malnourished, not eating enough, he's more prone to infection. And if somebody has an infection, he's more prone to malnutrition, so he can't use the food. It's a very nice, well, not nice, it affects the lymphocytes, your immune problem, your immune population of blood cells. So that's the first one. The second one is obesity and lifestyle. Now, I would imagine with all the people watching the World Cup cricket at the moment and eating while they're watching the television, this is not a good thing for obesity, because they're not, unless every time there's a run they get up and shake their leg or something and there's a fall, but they're sitting down and they're eating and consuming, and so we have the obesity lifestyle. The more you're obese, the less you're active. So another takeaway message for everybody is, I'm going to show you. Do you know what this is? What I carry with me? Ah, it's a pedometer. So the next question you ask me is, how many steps have I done today? And the answer is, not enough. I've actually done 5,951. This is a very useful little thing for people to carry around with them. I'm not going to tell you how many you should do, but the more the merrier. Every step counts. But it's for this bottom one, obesity and lifestyle. Healthy, active living. You've got to incorporate in there. I'm not in favor of joining a gymnasium, because it's not open to everybody. I'm very impressed with people who get off the bus or get out of the taxi 500 meters away from where they need, or people with a car who park far away. And did you know, ladies and gentlemen, because you're all pretty, you look pretty fair, that in every building in Mumbai, except the ones that are really high, that the lift up to the 4th floor is broken. Okay, you got the message. You've got the message. You've just got to be more active. You don't have to send an email to your wife down the corridor. You can get up and talk and walk. The more you active, the better. And the last one is the economic one, food purchasing power and employment, which I talked about where if food is available. Purchasing power depends on employment. Here we have to worry about what is the degree of unemployment. It's usually much higher in the young. In Spain, it's 30% in the people under 25. Really bad, really bad. People have got to have the dignity of labor. And then, once you've got all these things, so this is the background, I'm going to ask you a question. When you're looking at child malnutrition, I'm going to give you, hold on, let me just read my notes, a couple of reasons why it's gone down. One is changing the environment. One is improving women's status, empowerment. One is improving women's education, and the other is food availability. So when you look how things, the good side, things are improving, is it due to more food, better environment, better status, or education? What's the answer? Education. Women's education is the single most important, really very high, nearly 50% is due to improving child malnutrition. It's educating the mothers. Whether it's educating the mothers about vaccinating the children, whether it's educating the mother about fruits and vegetables, whether it's educating the mother in microfinance, that they should start doing things, growing vegetable gardens and things like that. It's terribly important. Which brings me on to the Global Nutrition Index. Is it possible to start improving countries' nutrition or even classifying? And we took this as a challenge, which has since been taken up by WHO and other organizations, and we used 3 criteria. We based it like on the Human Development Index. The first one is how many days are lost because of nutritional deficits. That's micronutrient deficiencies, vitamin A, iron, iodine. The second one is what we were talking about, availability, access, and adequacy, food security. But because of the double burden of disease, we actually penalized countries for nutrient excess. That's obesity. So here we developed a global nutritional index based on deficits, food security, and obesity index. And this is how it looks. Now, you can't compare apples and pears. It's a well-known statistical problem. So we use the WHO and United Nations criteria for countries, which are based on developed countries, countries in transition, low mortality, and high mortality developing countries. I'm giving you their indices based on those 3 criteria. So in high mortality developing countries, the best is Algeria, the worst is Sierra Leone, and we did 192 countries. In low mortality, Korea and Nauru. Countries in transition, Estonia and Tajikistan. That's the highest and the worst in that criteria. And lo and behold, in the developing countries, Japan is number 1 and the USA is number 99. Everybody says the USA should be good. Because of the obesity problem there, they go right down, they lost points. So that's the idea. Now I'm going to show you some examples. Unfortunately, I couldn't get India here, and I tried, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do here is, I got it off the web, is looking at what a weekly food budget is in different parts of the world. Now here in Sudan and the problems there, and going to Chad, the refugees, for $1 a week, remembering what people, this is what people are eating, even managing to smile on the right-hand side. Mainly grain, some water, a little bit of roots, living in a tent. Next at 5, and ranking now at 148, okay, in a high mortality developing country is Bhutan. Very low on obesity, high on food insecurity, or food security is a bad score, and deficiency very high. That's their group, and they're 148. Lots of fruits and vegetables, but not much protein. Okay? You can see that. Following that is Mongolia, which is ranked 140. Unfortunately, too much westernized, and the obesity and the food security very high. Unfortunately, my colors and your colors don't come out on this, but that's in red, 29%. 27% food security, or insecurity, basically, it should be. So that's Mongolia at 40. Egypt, 69, 138. High obesity, nearly 46%. Not too bad. I mean, the question is, people have eyes bigger than their stomachs. That's the problem. The food here isn't bad. I mean, when you're talking about nutrition, but just people eat too much. They don't know when to say no. Now, the key thing here is, I have to look at evolutionary anthropology. This business of eating 3 times a day is probably really quite not on. I think people used to eat only twice a day. So the message here is, by all means, eat more times a day, but eat the amounts of 2 meals a day throughout the day. Are you with me? So cut out the third meal. You don't really need a third meal. And because this isn't bad food choices, what nutritionists say, it's just that they don't have the education to say no, or they don't do any exercise. Following that up, I'm going to show you America with all the massive obesity. See, food security, the food there is very low. They don't have much deficiency, but they have massive obesity, 41%. And therefore they're very low. That's what an Afro-American couple eats, with a lot of pizza and processed food. And by and large, processed food is not good. But here you've got lovely dal and all the pulses, and food here is potentially excellent. We have the problem about protein. What's the main sources of protein to have in the Indian diet if one doesn't have eggs, which are very good, and meat? No. It's a question of using the pulses and the lentils and the beans and in the right proportions. And that's a challenge for nutritional education. How are we doing for time? Okay, a few. There's a big deficiency in Ecuador. There's the United Kingdom, which is bad on the obesity, and lots of dog food there, which says something about them. Don't look too happy. Germany, do we have... Oh no, this is China. And number 1 is Japan, which is quite surprising, actually. And the reason being is their obesity rate is 1.5%. They're not all sumo wrestlers, so that's good. The next thing is, what can you do with this index? And what we did is we tried to compare it to the Human Development Index. Now, the Human Development Index is also based on 3 things. It's based on life expectancy at birth, adult literacy, how much of the population can read and write, and the amount of GDP, the gross domestic product per capita. And it's ranked from 0 to 1. And we modeled our GNI, the Nutritional Index. Industrialized countries at 0.91, sub-Saharan Africa, half of that at 46. And then when you compare GNI with HDI, and this is in developing countries, I'm just showing you where Israel is here, and Greece. This is not a regression, it's a line of identity. This is ranking on the HDI, okay, and this is ranking on the GNI. Japan here is 1 on the GNI, and it's number 7 on the development index, okay? And you can see where people fall. That's Italy, Spain, Cyprus up there, France here. Countries above literally means that their development index is lower than the nutrition index, okay? Or their ranking is poorer. Here's France, which is nutritionally good, but developmentally bad. And nutrition lags behind development, like in Australia and the United States, where they're high on their human development, okay, but very badly ranked on their... This is the ranking on their GNI. This is for low mortality developing countries, and for high mortality. This is India, by the way, which is very close to the line of identity. They're ranked on in their grouping, they're about 11th or 12th on the GNI and about 20th on these data on human development. And what people in policy and public health, the whole idea is to move down to the bottom left-hand corner. The closer you are to the bottom left-hand corner means that you're better on your human development, the literacy, the life expectancy and the GDP, and you're better on the nutrition, the fuel. So it's a combination of the well-fed nation, the healthy nation, and the productive nation. Now, how do you do about it? Let's give you some, just on the last part, before we can have the questions, is let's see what we're going to do about achieving food and nutrition security. Well, the first of all is there's a thing called a rapid nutritional assessment, where there's a problem, you go in and find out. Now, this is one of the obvious interventions, but here I'd just like to give you one word which started in nutrition and something that has really changed my life. It's called positive deviance. What this means is when you're going into a problem where there is malnutrition, which it started in Vietnam, but it could well be in India, you go into the village and instead of looking at malnutrition, you look at the children who are well nourished. Okay, about 10-15% will be well nourished. And then you say to yourself, why are these kids well nourished when the majority are undernourished? And you ask their parents and you say, let's get together. Now, why is this? Why are your children? And they give you the answers if you get their confidence. And some of the answers are, well, we give them more fruits and vegetables, so we go out to the fields in the morning and we get some fruits and vegetables. That's fantastic. Another one say, well, we breastfeed up to 2 years. Another one says, well, we have a rich uncle who sends money once a month. Another one says, well, we steal.